understated elegance is the way I would describe Kykuit. The architecture, the art, learning about the philanthropy of the Rockefellers. There's always something new to discover that you can revel in. And I think that's the beauty of Kykuit. In 1893, John D. Rockefeller purchased property 20 miles north of New York City. This area of New York is part of Lenape-Hoking, the unceded territory of the native Lenape people. The estate is 500 feet above the Hudson River, and the name Kykuit is derived from the Dutch, meaning lookout point. It would become the Rockefeller family home for generations. John D. Rockefeller was born into a family of modest means in Richford, New York in 1839, and later moved to Ohio. In high school, John met Laura Spelman, who came from a family of abolitionists active in the Underground Railroad. They married in 1864. John built Standard Oil, one of the largest companies in American history, which was later broken up under federal antitrust law. As John's wealth and influence increased, he drew both the admiration and ire of his contemporaries. Laura and John shared deep religious convictions. They supported humanitarian causes throughout their lives. They funded institutions of higher learning, like the University of Chicago and Spelman College in Atlanta, devoted to education for African American women. They supported organizations that work to eradicate disease and conduct medical research, including what would become the Rockefeller University, the first biomedical research center in the United States. When John retired from business, he and Laura moved to Kykuit. Unfortunately, Laura's time at the house was cut short by her death. John continued the couple's shared dedication to philanthropy. By the end of his life in 1937, he had donated $540 million, over $9 billion today, setting a standard of giving for the family. Kykuit and the surrounding estate kept the Rockefellers united in their diverse interests, taking on a special role as the home at the heart of the family. A place where each generation would leave its mark. The family originally built Kykuit between 1906 and 1908, and subsequently remodeled it. The final phase of construction was supervised by John's only son, John D. Rockefeller Jr. Jr. was determined to build a home that would honor his father's accomplishments. A lover of nature, classical art, and Chinese ceramics, Jr. would introduce art into the home and landscape. At times, his vision of a grand estate placed him at odds with his more thrifty father, who avoided excessive displays of wealth. In 1913, Kykuit emerged as an elegant, classically inspired estate, balancing the grandeur of neoclassicism with the temperance of the family's Baptist ideals. Kykuit was not built as a place for lavish parties, but to be a home and a retreat from the public eye. An organ for playing hymns dominated the music room. Junior's wife, Abby Aldrich Rockefeller, introduced a new aesthetic and sensitivity to Kykuit when they moved in after Senior's death. A visionary art collector and philanthropist, Abby was the heart and soul of a large family, and she passed on her strong moral compass to her children. Abby was passionate and forward-thinking about art. She co-founded the Museum of Modern Art in New York City in 1929 and donated her art collection to the museum. After Abby's death in 1948, her children asked Henri Matisse to create the rose window at the nearby Union Church of Pocantico Hills, New York, as a memorial in her honor. The window was Matisse's last commissioned work. Abby and Junior's second son, New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller, shared his mother's passion for art. Nelson, his wife Happy, and their family moved into Kykuit in the 1960s.
I started working at Kykuit back in June of 1967. I had just graduated college, and I took this job to be the maid's maid. You clean the maid's rooms and the butler's room, and you set up for the staff meals. When the first two generations of the Rockefeller family lived here, this was a more formal house. But when Nelson Rockefeller moved in with his family, he wanted it to feel like a home, not a museum. We have some very old pieces here, over 1,000 years old. And when those little boys started whizzing around here on their big wheels, then the governor put plexiglass cases on them to protect the art, but also to allow those boys just to be little kids. And he wanted his children to grow up with the art, to be comfortable with it, to enjoy it. One of the things Nelson Rockefeller brought to Kykuit was his sense of color and space, his whole sense of art. He taught me a new way of looking at my surroundings, at looking at art, at looking in the world, and that's a gift I'll never forget.
Nelson transformed the empty basement into a series of art galleries filled with his personal collection by notable artists of his time, including Calder, Picasso, Nevelson, and Warhol. It was a place he fully called his own. If Abby Aldrich Rockefeller were to see these galleries today, I think she would be very excited and proud that her son followed in her footsteps by supporting modern and contemporary artists. Nelson derived an enormous amount of pleasure from art, and he was drawn to work from a wide range of times and places. He continued his parents' legacy with the addition of 120 pieces of sculpture to the estate.
Nelson Rockefeller's death in 1979 was a catalyst for one of the most significant changes at Kykuit, the donation of the property to the National Trust for Historic Preservation and the introduction of Kykuit to the public through tours offered by Historic Hudson Valley. Today, the stewardship and preservation of Kykuit is managed by the Rockefeller Brothers Fund as part of the Pocantico Center, which brings people together through a robust slate of conferences, artist residencies, and public programs at the estate. Kykuit's historical significance, world-class art, architecture, and inspiring landscape will endure thanks to the unique partnership of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, and Historic Hudson Valley, and their dedication to sharing the Rockefeller family legacy.